Hello, Namaskar. This is Firstpost and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. A powerful earthquake has hit Russia's far east. It measured 8.8 on the Richter scale. This was the sixth strongest quake ever recorded. Panic has spread across the Pacific. Tsunami warnings were issued from Hawaii to California. Waves have started hitting America's coastal regions, and in Japan, nearly 2 million people have been evacuated. We will bring you the latest updates. For now, the global economy remains insulated from Trump's tariffs. The IMF has upgraded its growth forecast, but the optimism may not last long. We'll tell you why. In Israel, 31 public figures have taken a stand against their government. They're asking for sanctions on their own country. They want the starvation in Gaza to stop. In Angola, there are violent protests over a fuel price hike and what you should know before taking weight loss drugs. You've seen the bold promises, but do check the warnings in the fine print. All this and more coming up. The headlines first. Italy summons the Russian ambassador after Moscow included the Italian president on a list of Western officials critical of the Kremlin. The list features a speech by the Italian leader where he compared Russia's war in Ukraine to conflicts involving Nazi Germany. Italy under Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni has been a staunch advocate of Kiev. China says it will hold joint military drills with Russia in August. This will include sea and air exercises as well as naval patrols in the Pacific. In recent years, Beijing and Moscow have deepened their ties. China claims the drills are regular bilateral cooperation and not directed against third parties. Myanmar's junta enacts a law mandating prison sentences for election critics. This comes ahead of polls scheduled for later this year. The opposition plans to boycott the election, claims it is a ploy to legitimize the junta's rule. The military came to power in Myanmar through a coup in 2021, sparking a civil war. The African Union says it won't recognize a parallel government in the Sudan. It has also urged its members to follow suit. The two-year civil war in the Sudan has pitted the military against the paramilitary, which announced that it was forming its own government and appointed a prime minister last Saturday. And in India, monsoons wreak havoc. In the northern state of Himachal Pradesh, more than 150 people have died in the last 10 days. The rains have crippled critical public infrastructure. Several roads are blocked and power and water services have been severely hit. Donald Trump has dropped his tariff bomb. He will slap 25% tariffs on Indian goods. It's a move that could threaten billions in Indian exports. He made the announcement on social media today. Trump listed out a list of complaints against India. He complained of a rising deficit. He said, we bought too many Russian weapons and therefore he is imposing 25% tariffs. The new rates will kick in when the deadline expires on August 1st. I know this is enough bad news, but there is more. Trump is also hinting at additional penalties over the 25%. For what? Our trade with Russia and our ties to BRICS. Now, this will worry India, and I'll explain why. Trump has struck a series of deals in recent weeks. He's got Vietnam to pay 20% tariffs. Indonesia will pay 19%. The Philippines will also pay 19%. Japan will pay 15%. And the UK will pay 10%. The European Union, again, 15% tariffs. But Trump says India could pay 25%. Anything over 20% will make Indian exports less competitive. Why? Because others are paying less tariffs, and less tariffs equals less cost. Let's look at some numbers now. The India-US trade stands at $130 billion. This equation is tagged in India's favor. We export goods worth $88 billion, and we import goods worth $42 billion. So India has a trade surplus of $46 billion with the US. A higher tariff would erode that. In fact, experts are bracing for a big hit. They say Indian exports could shrink by 12 to 18%. The question is, can it be avoided? Let's look at India's plan. Officials are willing to wait until mid-August. That's when a US trade delegation will visit India. Apparently, the focus is on a comprehensive deal or discussion, not on immediate tariff concessions. Meaning, India is putting long-term gain ahead of short-term pain. It's a risky strategy because if it does not work, India will face very steep tariffs. 25% reciprocal rates, maybe 10% BRICS tariff, plus 100% secondary tariffs over Russia. That would be a worst-case scenario. And just to be clear, India is willing to make some concessions. We have hinted at cutting automobile tariffs. We are okay with slashing American whiskey tariffs. We are keen to import US weapons. We are also looking to buy US energy. But the problem is, all of that may not be enough. Because as of today, Donald Trump has momentum. He has secured zero tariff access to multiple markets like Vietnam, the Philippines, Indonesia. With Japan, he did the unthinkable. Tokyo has historically protected their rice market, but Trump has gained access to it. Japan will increase US rice imports by 75%. So put yourself in Trump's shoes. You've gained zero tariff access to Southeast Asia. You will export rice to Japan. So naturally, you will expect the same from India. Trump wants to export agricultural goods to India, but that's a strict no for New Delhi. Almost half of all Indians work in farming, so any tariff will trigger a backlash. Chances are the government will try to avoid that, especially ahead of key state elections. As things stand, India faces a tough challenge. In the long run, this is not an issue. We are making multiple moves to secure our markets. India has struck a free trade deal with the UK. Another deal with Europe is expected soon. So the long-term plan is to diversify away from the US. But in the short term, it looks like a deal is necessary. Countries around the world have realized that. Only Canada and China have retaliated. Everyone else is lining up for interim deals with the US. So can India survive without one? The only saving grace is the domestic sentiment in India. Trump used to be a favorite in this country, but now things have soured. He keeps claiming credit for the recent India-Pakistan ceasefire, something that he also repeated yesterday.
They ended the war with Pakistan at my request, and that was great. And Pakistan did also. You know, we did a lot of great settlements, including the recent one, as you know, with Cambodia.
That does give the government some wiggle room, but it may not be enough. I know this delay is increasing the confusion, but it's also a sign that the government is not giving too many concessions. The key, as always, is to find a balance. Let's see what D-Day brings. The residents of Petropavlovsk-Kamchatsky woke up to chaos. Windows rattled, walls trembled, traffic froze, and panic spread. At exactly 8:25 a.m. local time, the earth moved beneath Russia's far east. A massive earthquake struck just off the coast. The magnitude was around 8.8 on the Richter scale, the most powerful earthquake to strike the region since 1952. That's more than 70 years. Russia's Far East shook by its impact, and for a few terrifying moments, everything stood still. Several people are injured, most of them sustained injuries while evacuating. There has been some damage. A kindergarten collapsed during the quake. There were no kids in there, thankfully. So only the building is damaged. For now, things are under control in Russia. However, there is panic across the globe, and I will tell you why. Let me pull up a map for you. This is Russia's Kamchatka Peninsula. That's where the earthquake's epicenter is. And this sits on the Ring of Fire. The Ring of Fire is a belt around the edges of the Pacific Ocean. This is the Earth's most geologically active zone. The planet constantly moves and explodes here. 90% of the earthquakes happen on this ring. It is home to 452 volcanoes. So this zone is no stranger to seismic activities. But this earthquake was a massive one. It was the biggest in 14 years, the strongest since the 2011 Japan earthquake, and the sixth largest quake on record, the sixth largest ever. All of this has raised another fear, the fear of tsunamis. You see, when the ocean floor moves during an earthquake, it displaces a lot of water, and that triggers giant waves, or tsunamis as they're called. So this massive quake triggered global tsunami warnings in Japan and in all of the US West Coast, in Hawaii, and even as far as Alaska. Basically, the entire Pacific coast. Countries soon jumped into action. Russia was the first to be affected, of course. The tsunami waves flooded coastal towns. Buildings were submerged in seawater. 2,000 people were evacuated here. Russia has declared emergency on the tsunami-hit islands. The region's governor called for calm.
Today's earthquake was a challenge for all of us. It's the strongest in decades of tremors. According to preliminary estimates by specialists and seismologists, the magnitude of the earthquake was 7.7 to 7.9, and there is a tsunami threat warning. That's why I am again repeating my plea to stay away from coastlines.
Then it was Japan. It started evacuating its citizens. Nearly 2 million people were moved out of coastal areas.
For citizens in the areas included in the tsunami warning, please evacuate to a safe place immediately, such as designated evacuation buildings and hills. We are receiving reports and currently monitoring for any details of damage or casualties.
Workers evacuated the Fukushima nuclear plant. In 2011, it was the site of a major nuclear disaster, so this time there were concerns too. Officials say there were no abnormalities yet. On the mainland, people moved to higher ground. People were seen sheltering on the roof. Tsunami sirens were heard in Japan's Hokkaido. And soon the massive waves came. The first wave struck the north of Japan. They were around 1 to 1.6 foot high, which is small compared to what they've seen in the past. And yet authorities remain on alert. Which brings us to the United States of America. Hawaii was the first to sound the alarm. It asked everyone to vacate the beaches and move inland.
We would not be doing this if this wasn't most serious at this point in time. So please take this very seriously and don't go down to the beach. Don't be looking at waves. Get yourself as high as you possibly can.
This triggered chaos across the island. There were traffic jams as cars headed inland. Traffic came to a standstill in the capital, Honolulu.
Where are we going?
Smells like cow.
Where are we going?
Go straight.
In beach-facing hotels, guests were on high alert, many crowding on their balconies to assess the situation. Hawaii is yet to see any major wave, but the island is still on guard. Other states like California, Oregon, Alaska also remain on high alert. And while the world braces for a disaster, the internet is busy digging up clues from before the earthquake struck. The first is this video. It's from yesterday. It shows 5 beluga whales washed up on the Kamchatka beach. And there's also this other video. It shows sea lions fleeing the beaches, that too in large numbers. So the internet says nature knew this was coming. And then there's the viral theory, a 1999 manga called The Future I Saw. It predicted a catastrophic earthquake and a tsunami in July 2025. That is this month. And for years it was dismissed as fiction, but this year it's been trending in Asia, and that prophecy suddenly feels too close to reality. But whatever it is, the Ring of Fire is not done yet. Scientists say aftershocks could follow. Some may be just as strong as the first quake, and tsunami threats could last hours or days. So for now, the world holds its breath, watching the waves and waiting for what comes next. Trump's moves on tariffs are being watched closely. For now, they seem to have spared the global economy. Yesterday, the IMF sprang a surprise. The IMF, as you would know, is the International Monetary Fund. It has upgraded its global growth forecast. Earlier, the global economy was expected to grow at 2.8% this year. But the new estimate is 3%. And for 2026, the projected growth rate is 3.1%. Now, a 3% global growth rate is a sign of resilience and modest recovery. But it does remain below the pre-pandemic average of 3.7%. And from 2.8 to 3 may seem like only a marginal increase, yet it is noteworthy, A, because it's an increase despite the chaos, and B, because of the factors that drove this revision.
Global growth has been revised up to 3% in 2025 and 3.1% in 2026, reflecting stronger than expected front-loading, lower tariff rates compared to early April, easier financial conditions, including a weaker US dollar, and fiscal expansion in some jurisdictions.
Well, that was the IMF chief economist explaining why growth will increase. He mentioned front-loading. What does that mean? What is front-loading? It simply means doing something earlier than you would normally do. And how does it apply to trade? You see, traders often engage in front-loading. When they anticipate a crisis, they stock up in advance. They import large quantities of goods. And in recent months, traders have been doing this. There's been a lot of front-loading. And it's no secret why. This is an attempt to avoid Trump's tariffs. And this has led to a bump in trading activity, which in turn influenced the IMF's ratings upgrade. So that's the first reason behind the revision. The second reason is Trump's decision to delay the tariffs. It saved global trade from sweeping disruption, at least for the time being. Because look at the older IMF projections. 24% tariff on average on all American imports. That was the expectation, 24% average tariffs. But now with delays and trade concessions, the effective tariff rate has come down to 17%. Although it's still higher than before, but it's not as bad as feared. So the worst case scenario has been avoided. Plus, the falling value of the dollar has helped. Thanks to Trump's policies, the US dollar has weakened considerably. It is having a bad year. In fact, the last 6 months were the worst for the dollar in almost 50 years. A falling dollar means losses for investors and a loss of trust in the American financial system. But it also makes debt servicing cheaper. Let me explain how. Say you're an Indian company and you borrowed money from a US bank. This bank gave you a loan in the American dollar, but you sell products here in India, so your earnings are in the Indian rupee. But your loan repayment is still in the US dollar. And now that the dollar is weaker, you may stand to gain. You'll save in the currency conversion. So servicing your loan could become cheaper, all because the US dollar has fallen in value and you're getting more dollars for your rupees. So these are the three reasons: front-loading by traders, delay in Trump tariffs, and the dollar's depreciation. These three factors have contributed to the IMF's upgrade. In fact, they've revised the growth forecast for India too. Again, this is a marginal increase from 6.2% to 6.4%. But all of this also comes with a word of caution.
Risks remain tilted to the downside. A breakdown in trade talks or renewed protectionism could dampen growth globally and fuel inflation in some countries. Persistent uncertainty may weigh on investment, while geopolitical tensions and fiscal vulnerabilities pose additional threats.
A breakdown in trade negotiations, risk of inflation in the developing world, and geopolitical tensions and conflicts like the war in Ukraine and the conflict in Gaza. All of these still pose considerable risk to the global economy. Now, given the many variables, the gains of today may be short-lived. But for the moment, the takeaway is positive. The world has dodged the risks. Let's hope it stays that way. The suffering in Gaza continues. If Israeli bombs don't kill you, hunger will. If hunger doesn't kill you, disease will. It's quickly turning into the biggest humanitarian crisis of our times. We told you how the global opinion is shifting, but so is Israeli opinion. Israeli citizens are questioning their government. 31 public figures have written a letter. They are demanding crippling sanctions on their own country. Let me repeat that for you. Israelis are demanding sanctions on Israel. And who are these public figures? You've got an Israeli Oscar-winning director, a former attorney general, a former speaker of Israel's parliament, and multiple recipients of the Israel Prize. Now, this is an award given for cultural excellence, sort of like Israel's Padma Awards. All these people are asking for sanctions on their own country. And this is not an isolated move. 2 Israeli rights groups have prepared a report. Both came to the same conclusion, that Israel is committing genocide in Gaza.
Israel is committing genocide in Gaza. This crime must stop immediately. The primary responsibility lies with the Israeli government, but also with the international community.
What about the Israeli public? Well, look at this poll from mid-July. It found that 74% of Israelis wanted to end the war. Of course, their reasons vary. Not all of them think that there's a genocide in Gaza. Most of them want to bring the hostages back home. Whatever the motive, the opinion is clear. Israelis want to end the war. Now, look at the sentiment in the United States of America. Only 32% Americans approve of Israel's war. It was 50%. When the war started, 50% approved of the war, now only 32%. It was 42% last September. That's a 10-point drop in the last 1 year. An overwhelming 60% Americans disapprove of the war. Even Republican sentiment is shifting. Just look at Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene. She's a key ally of Donald Trump, yet she says Israel is committing genocide in Gaza. So clearly, US public opinion is shifting. But what about their president? He is certainly becoming more vocal about the situation. Listen to what he had to say yesterday.
I think everybody, unless they're pretty cold-hearted or worse than that, nuts. There's nothing you can say other than it's terrible when you see the kids. And those are kids, whether they talk starvation or not, those are kids that are starving. They are starving. And you see the mothers, they love them so much, and there's just nothing they seem to be able to do.
That's rare compassion from Donald Trump. But will it shift his policy? There are no indications of that yet. His top foreign ally, the UK, just decided to recognize Palestine. But Trump is not in favor of that. He says that would be like rewarding Hamas, which is also what Israel says. Prime Minister Netanyahu slammed UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer yesterday. He accused the British Prime Minister of rewarding and appeasing Hamas. But London does not seem to mind.
The Netanyahu government's rejection of a two-state solution is wrong. It's wrong morally and it's wrong strategically. It harms the interests of the Israeli people, closing off the only path to a just and lasting peace. And that is why we are determined to protect the viability of a two-state solution.
Keir Starmer is threading a needle here. He says he will recognize Palestine in September. That's when the United Nations General Assembly will be in session. At the same time, he has put a condition. If Israel ends the war in Gaza, if they create a plan for a Palestinian state, then Starmer will hold off. But let's face it, that's never going to happen. Even if Israel ends this war, Netanyahu has always opposed a Palestinian state. So Starmer is doing a fine balancing act. He's also completing the circle of history. Let's go back to 1917. That's when the British government published the Balfour Declaration. Arthur Balfour was Britain's foreign secretary. He basically made a promise in 1917 that Jews would have a homeland in Palestine. Britain controlled this land from 1920 to 1948. They encouraged the migration of Jews to West Asia. Yet the same Britain is now recognizing Palestine. Although it doesn't change anything on the ground. And yet the symbolism is huge. Unfortunately, symbolism won't feed hungry Gazans. Aid shipments continue to be a trickle. Only 109 trucks entered Gaza yesterday. That's far less than the 600 trucks required. Plus, the delivery is not perfect. The trucks can only use designated routes. Some of them are unable to reach the distribution points. Also, looting is a major problem. Gangs in Gaza are stealing the aid shipments. So it's not reaching the people who really need it. At least 147 Gazans have died of starvation in recent weeks. 88 of them are children. In addition to trucks, airdrops are also being done. Again, this is not perfect. Some of the packets are falling on people, others are falling on their tents. In some cases, massive aid packages have fallen into the sea. What follows is a deadly clamor. Dozens fling themselves into the water in desperation. Surely we can do better than this. I know the two-state solution is complicated. Many people feel it's not the right time, that the decision should be made during peace, not war. But can we agree that starving children is not acceptable? If that isn't a common ground, I'm afraid this is not about two states or politics. It's about something evil and unacceptable. Over the last decade, one word has dominated US politics: MAGA. Make America Great Again. It was coined by Donald Trump. It was chanted by his base. It was branded onto red hats across the US. By 2024, this base was not just loyal, they were loud and in the face. And a few men came to define the sound of this movement, almost like a boy band. Trump was the front man. Joe Rogan hit the lead notes. Steve Bannon pounded the drums of revolution. Tucker Carlson crooned into the primetime mic, and Elon Musk popped in for some solos. They were in sync, belting out the same hits. But even the best boy bands fall apart. Just ask the Beatles or One Direction. And now this MAGA boy band is breaking up over the Epstein files. One is storming off stage. One is throwing shade at the front man. Another is leaking gossip to the press. And at the center of it all, still holding the mic, is Donald Trump. But he's not too happy about it.
Mr. President, was part of the rush to get this deal done to knock the Jeffrey Epstein story out?
Oh, you got to be kidding with that. No, had nothing to do with it. Only you would think that. That had nothing to do with it.
Saying you did not write a letter for Jeffrey Epstein's birthday?
I don't even know what they're talking about. Now, somebody could have written a letter and used my name, but that's happened a lot.
Take Joe Rogan, for example. He campaigned for Donald Trump. He endorsed him. Rogan's support boosted Trump's standing among young men in America, but that same Joe Rogan is now accusing Trump of quote-unquote gaslighting. He has a podcast. It's called The Joe Rogan Experience. This is America's most popular podcast. And in the latest episode, Rogan mentioned Epstein a total of 40 times, 40 times in just one show. He criticized the FBI. He slammed the Justice Department. He called out the administration's silence. Rogan wants the Epstein files out. And he says Trump's refusal is a line in the sand. And Joe Rogan is not the only one asking questions. Tucker Carlson has joined the chorus too. He's a primetime journalist turned right-wing commentator. Look at what he said recently. The left used to dismiss critics outright, say things like, "You're not worth listening to," and now the Trump administration is doing the same. Carlson's not just questioning Trump, he's comparing him to the left, and that's a major shift from one of MAGA's loudest voices. And what about Elon Musk? Well, he's been stoking the fire for a while. He once posted that Trump's name is on the Epstein list. He hasn't said much since, but he hasn't stayed silent either. The Tesla CEO keeps retweeting conspiracy threads that link Trump and Epstein. Now, a quick primer here. The whole saga began with one man, Jeffrey Epstein. In the 2000s, he was popular in America. He threw parties, flew private jets, and surrounded himself with the rich and the powerful. On paper, Epstein was a financier, but behind closed doors, he was a predator. Epstein was accused of sexually abusing underage girls. By July 2019, he was charged with sex trafficking. Within weeks, he killed himself in prison. But the case did not die with him. If anything, it exploded. Because Epstein did not act alone. And the world wanted names. Who were his accomplices? Who were his clients? Trump promised to give them those names, but now he says there is no list at all. And that has split the MAGA. After all, Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein were once friends. The US president says they fell out. Some believe him, others think that he's hiding something. And reports suggest Trump's name is in fact in the Epstein list.
But for years, I wouldn't talk to Jeffrey Epstein. I wouldn't talk because he did something that was inappropriate. He hired help. And I said, don't ever do that again. He stole people that worked for me. I said, don't ever do that again. He did it again. And I threw him out of the place, persona non grata. I threw him out, and that was it. I'm glad I did, if you want to know the truth.
Mr. President,
and by the way, I never went to the island.
And here's the problem with all of this. This scandal is not just about Jeffrey Epstein, it's about MAGA's obsession with elites. Trump may paint himself as an outsider, but he was one of them. He partied with them, he donated to them, and now he governs like them, dodging questions and blaming others. So MAGA is slowly turning against him. And Trump himself seems unsure. He doesn't know which version of the story to tell. The victim, betrayed by a predator, the hero cleaning up the swamp, or the real estate mogul who was just caught up in all of this.
Just to button up on Mar-a-Lago, you're saying that Jeffrey Epstein poached 2 of your staffers. Who were they?
Yeah, I don't want to say 2, or I don't want to say any number. You're talking about many years ago. But yeah, he took people. And because he took people, I say, don't do it anymore. You know, they work for me. And he took, beyond that, he took some others. And once he did that, that was the end of him. I didn't like, when they steal people, I don't like it.
So will this drive a wedge in the MAGA, or will Trump's loyal base come around? You could say this is not the first such case, that scandals come and go, and you'd be right. But this one cuts differently, because this time Trump is not fighting the establishment, he is the establishment. And the rest of the band, they're either walking off or throwing bottles at him. Now let's turn our attention to Angola. This is an oil-rich country in southern Africa, and it is witnessing deadly protests over fuel prices. Earlier this month, the government decided to hike the price of diesel by 1/3. This spurred off and on demonstrations. And this happened over the month. But this week, the protests flared. Thousands of people have taken to the streets in the capital, Luanda. They have clashed with the police. There are reports of rampant looting and destruction of property. At least 4 people have died and 500 have been arrested. This is the most disruptive protest the country has seen in recent years. So is this anger just about fuel price hikes? Why does the government want to do it in the first place? Also, if Angola has black gold wealth, why does it remain largely impoverished? Here's a report.
Fuel, expensive. Taxes, expensive. Life, difficult. As thousands march in Angola, this summarizes their anger. It all began earlier this month, when the southern African country's government made a contentious decision. They announced plans to raise the price of diesel by more than 33%. This was part of a long-running government drive to cut costly subsidies and shore up public finances. But the problems for ordinary citizens began to snowball. From higher fares for Angolans who rely on public transport to increase in prices of staple foods. With this, anger surged too. Over the past month, people have taken to the streets off and on. But on Monday, taxi drivers declared a 3-day strike. And soon, This escalated into one of the most disruptive protests Angola has seen in recent years.
This is where we say enough is enough. We can't accept having to change course one day. Every time this happens, we won't stop, we'll carry on.
More than 2,000 people have taken to the streets in capital Luanda. Roads have been blocked, with burning cars and tires scattered around. Shops have been destroyed. Looting is rampant. Gunfire has been reported. The police have clashed with protesters, fired tear gas and smoke grenades. At least 4 people have been killed, and at least 500 arrested. But rising fuel prices haven't fueled public anger alone. People are fed up with the rising cost of living, and the ruling People's Movement for the Liberation of Angola Party.
The people are suffering. The cost of living keeps rising and we don't know what it will be like in a few days' time.
MPLA has ruled Angola since its independence from Portugal in 1975, and for years, it had a good run. After all, Angola is an oil-rich nation. It is one of the biggest oil producers in Africa. Since the turn of the century, for about a decade, oil was driving Angola's booming economy. 4 years, its GDP surged by several hundred%. But soon the growth slumped. Economic woes persisted, and despite the oil wealth, Angola remains impoverished. This country is heavily reliant on oil extraction. The petroleum industry accounts for almost 75% of the country's revenues. But there are 2 problems here. First, this limits the sources of income for its people. Secondly, much of the resource pool is untapped, estimated at 9 billion barrels of crude oil reserves. Because Angola has crude oil, but can't process it, it doesn't have enough refineries. This means Angola spends more than $2 billion every year on petroleum imports. Meanwhile, oil accounts for more than 95% of its goods exports. But despite this, there are economic challenges. The biggest one is corruption. Angola is one of the most corrupt countries in the world. There are not enough jobs. Unemployment is close to 60%. And food insecurity persists, with 46 children dying of malnutrition each day. So there is widespread discontent against the MPLA party. But Angolan President João Lourenço claims that the protesters are using price rises to undermine the government. Amid his disregard, can public anger put pressure on the government to change its mind? If not, as the frustrations spill over, will they reach boiling point this time?
Social media baffles governments, especially when it comes to children. Young users need their socials to connect with people, to learn about the world, to keep up with the volatility of pop culture. But social media is also dangerous for children. It causes low self-esteem, eating disorders, depression, poor sleep. It is linked to violence and online harassment. Heaps of research proves this, and governments know this. They have known it for years. So now one among them is all set to take action. Australia. They have introduced a social media ban, a ban for children under 16 years of age. This is the first such ban in the world. It is due to start in December, and it limits the use of social media for children. This includes TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, X, and Snapchat. After the month of December, these apps will not be accessible to children in Australia. Now, you may notice one popular name missing here: YouTube. This is a giant video sharing platform. It is owned by Google. 68% children in Australia use YouTube, but it was exempt from the ban mainly because of its educational videos. That is, until an online safety regulator drew up a survey. This survey showed that YouTube is not just as dangerous as the rest, it can be even more harmful. Nearly 4 in 10 children have consumed harmful content on YouTube. This is more than any other platform. So now Australia has done a little backflip. It says YouTube will be included in this ban. Of course, the company is not too happy about this. First, it played on technicalities. It said that YouTube is not social media. Then it tried diplomacy. It wanted to quote-unquote engage with the government in Australia. And when that did not work, YouTube reportedly threatened Australia that it will sue. But the government remains undeterred, and they have a wonderful analogy. And I'll tell you why. They say, the Australian government says that letting children use social media is like letting them swim in the open ocean instead of the local pool, where, like predatory algorithms, sharks can target the kids. The government says, and I'm quoting, "We cannot control the ocean, but we can police the sharks, and we will not be intimidated by legal threats." Most people, barring YouTube, of course, seem to be lapping this up. Polls show that the majority of Australians favor this ban. Plus, this is a pioneering law, so it is being watched with great interest globally. Norway wants to announce a similar ban, so does the United Kingdom, but experts are seriously concerned. First, there are gaping holes. The government says companies can be fined up to $33 million if they do not comply. But how will they assess the age of a user? How will they ensure compliance? They have been left to figure it out. And this is easier said than done. It is very easy to bypass age verifications on social media. Children can use a fake account. They can lie about their age. They can use private networks. Secondly, there are no new guardrails for the platforms themselves. For instance, children can still use YouTube. They can still watch the harmful videos. They just cannot make an account on it. Plus, the bigger question also persists. Don't children have the right to be online? Is it okay to ban them from social media? Experts say this is merely a band-aid, not a solution. So what is a solution then? Strengthening regulation, pulling up tech giants, monitoring problematic algorithms, limiting children's access to harmful content, better reporting features, and stronger content warnings. There is enough and more research to show how social media can be safer. But so far, no government has successfully made it happen. And yes, it is not easy. But banning smartphones or banning social media for children does not do much for safety. It just excludes children. It makes for strange analogies because banning social media is not policing the sharks. It is not providing a local pool either. It is simply banning children from the open waters. But you see, swimming was never the problem. It was a lack of safer waters. And whose fault is that? Now let's talk about yet another landmark achievement by India's space scientists. India and the US launched a new satellite today. It's called NISAR. This is a joint mission by India's ISRO, that's the Indian Space Research Organization, and America's space agency, NASA. The launch happened earlier this evening. But why is this satellite so special? Because it is designed to scan the entire planet. It can track changes in most geographies. It can work both day and night. And it can see through clouds, dust and smoke, even natural disasters. NISAR can be useful for flood alerts. It can help scientists understand quakes and rising seas as well. Our next report has more.
3, 2, 1, 0. All L40 engines generating nominal thrust. S139 motor ignited.
India has launched one of its most ambitious space missions yet, a joint effort with the United States, and a milestone for science, climate, and global partnerships. This is NISAR, the NASA, ISRO Synthetic Aperture Radar Satellite. It's the world's most advanced Earth observation satellite, and today, it was dispatched to the Earth's orbit. The satellite was launched from Sriharikota on board ISRO's GSLV Mk2 rocket. It weighs over 3 tons. And it costs more than $1.5 billion. The project was 10 years in the making. NISAR is designed to scan the Earth every 12 days. Unlike a traditional satellite that takes pictures, NISAR will use radar to bounce signals off the surface. Then it calculates how those signals change. That tells scientists what's moving and by how much. So how is that useful? Because the Earth is always changing, through earthquakes, floods, landslides, and drought. Through farming, construction, and climate change, NISAR can track it all. It can even detect small ground movements. It can see through smoke, clouds, and even dense forest, in daylight or darkness, in good weather or storms. This is crucial in the event of natural disasters. NISAR can be pointed at disaster zones, and it can generate damage assessments quickly. It can track tectonic shifts, monitor crop growth, watch rising sea levels, and help predict droughts and floods. This is not just about science. This is about lives and livelihoods, and about helping governments act early before a crisis hits. For India, NISAR's data is critical. It can help track groundwater levels, identify damaged roads, bridges, or dams, and support food security. This is also a story of trust. NISAR is not a NASA project. It is not an ISRO mission. It is a joint effort. Each side contributed key technology towards this mission. Operations will be split too. NASA will handle global data. ISRO will manage regional coverage. And both agencies will run day-to-day controls from their ground stations. The data will be free for all. Governments, scientists, and students across the world. NISAR is also a signal to the world that India is now a global launch partner. The GSLV Mk2 rocket carried NISAR to orbit and proved once again ISRO can deliver when it comes to big-ticket missions. This mission is about Earth, but it shows how far Indian space science has come, from building satellites, to leading global collaborations, to launching one of the most sophisticated climate tools ever built.
Revolutionary, unprecedented, game-changing. Weight loss drugs have been called all of this and more. Your Ozempic, Wegovy, Mounjaro, and others, they are the new normal, and they're everywhere. But are they too good to be true? Weight loss drugs were first developed as a diabetes treatment. They were meant to help lower blood sugar levels, but it became obvious how they affect your body. They cut weight dramatically. You see, these jabs suppress your appetite, so you feel full. You eat less and you burn more energy, which means you lose huge amounts of weight rapidly, enough to rival surgical procedures. So doctors started using the same drugs to treat obesity. And then there was no looking back. It became a trend. Less about health, more about aesthetics. Now celebrities are taking these drugs, social media is promoting them, and people are scrambling to get them. It is tough to know exactly how many people use weight loss drugs and why, but according to estimates by Morgan Stanley Research, about 11% of the world is using them. That's about 1.3 billion people on weight loss drugs. Last year, this market stood at $15 billion. By 2035, it could reach $150 billion. And this is not surprising. The demand for weight loss drugs is soaring, so much so that it could soon become unsustainable. Says who? A UK trade body, the National Pharmacy Association. It says that there is so much demand for weight loss drugs that there are supply problems. There are persistent shortages. So those who really need them, like overweight patients, cannot find the drugs at pharmacies. And this is not just a UK problem. Shortages have been reported the world over. And this has spurred what's being called the Ozempic underground, a black market of weight loss drugs, where people are securing them privately, illegally, via websites and social media. This market is booming and it is filled with counterfeit products. Doctors fear that this can fuel a health crisis. But even with the real goods, the same fear persists. We could be looking at a health crisis. You see, weight loss drugs come with a big, bold promise. But they also come with side effects, which are buried in the fine print. Most of these drugs cause diarrhea, nausea, and vomiting, and we know this. It is printed on the packets. But in recent months, a range of concerning reports have emerged. They warn of acute gallstone disease in people and hypoglycemia, which happens when your blood sugar levels drop too low. Also stomach paralysis and blocked intestines. Hundreds of people have reported problems with their pancreas. People took the weight loss drugs and then they had to be hospitalized. Recent studies have found links between weight loss drugs and suicidal thoughts. They can cause depression, raise the risk of womb cancer, and double the risk of eye damage in diabetic patients. And these are not mild problems. These are medical emergencies. Despite this, millions of people are taking weight loss drugs. We still don't know how common the side effects are or how big they will be in the future. What we are witnessing today is arguably unprecedented. These medicines are being developed at breakneck speed. New players are entering the space. The drugs are being promoted by influencers. But what about the research? It is playing catch up. This weight loss boom resembles a giant human experiment. So what should you do? At the very least, know the risks. Do your research and speak to a doctor who knows your history. Because weight loss drugs may be revolutionary. They may promise to shave off a few kilos, but they may also demand their pound of flesh. There was a time when creating a fashion ad required a full team: photographers, stylists, lighting crew, makeup artists, and most importantly, the model. But not anymore. The August print edition of Vogue featured an ad with a model, but she doesn't exist. In fact, she was made by artificial intelligence. And this has sparked some questions. Is AI taking over our creative fields? Is this the beginning of the end for fashion and the movie industry? Do we need some red lines? Our next report tells you.
From the pages of Vogue, a flawless woman looks out at you. She has blonde hair, blue eyes, and a huge smile. But here's the problem. She isn't real. In Vogue's August edition, the face of Guess's new summer campaign wasn't a face at all. It was a model generated entirely by artificial intelligence. You'll find a footnote admitting as much if you squint. Vogue insists this was no editorial decision, but the implications are massive. You see, the pitch itself is simple, faster, cheaper, and fuss-free. No makeup artists, no lighting rigs, no international shoots, no models. Just prompts and processing power, and you get a fashion ad. But the industry isn't just about the face on the billboard. It's about the ecosystem: stylists, interns, assistants, lighting crews. When AI replaces one piece, the whole machinery shakes. Yet, AI advocates insist it won't replace everyone. It's a supplement, they say. But is it even true anymore? In the Argentine Netflix series El Eternauta, a building collapses spectacularly. But the real disruption isn't on screen, it's behind the scenes. That destruction was generated with AI, not modeled, rigged, or lit, just described. It took 1/10 of the time traditional CGI would require. That's the appeal of generative AI in film. What once took months now takes minutes. But time saved is not always trust earned. What does it mean for a viewer to know their favorite explosion was dreamed up by a bot? And that's not all. In India, a 2013 film called Ranjana is getting a re-release. That too, with an AI-generated happy ending. The director, Anand L. Rai, was not consulted. His story has literally been rewritten, but the production house sees it differently. It believes that if AI allows it to change something for the good, it shouldn't be a problem. Basically, if it's legal and profitable, it's fair game. In Hollywood, AI has been used to clone voices, enhance accents, and even resurrect the dead. The late Anthony Bourdain spoke in his own documentary via AI voice simulation. Last year's actors and writers' strikes centered on exactly this fear, that your face, your voice, your body could be licensed without your permission, or worse, without your knowledge. Imagine your likeness starring in a film you never auditioned for, saying lines you never wrote, making a joke you would have hated. It may sound like science fiction, but it is increasingly feeling like reality. So where's the red line? Those advocating for AI argue that lower costs democratize art. AI expands imagination beyond physical limits. Speed and accessibility can help projects that otherwise wouldn't exist. But on the flip side, jobs will be lost across creative industries. There will be loss of human touch, story, and emotion. Creative ownership and consent will erode fast. AI may be unstoppable, but that doesn't mean it's ungovernable. We've regulated food, drugs, even fonts on cigarette packets. Art deserves the same care, because if you can change the model, the scene, the story, and the soul, at what point are we just watching ourselves be replaced?
Donald Trump has wrapped up his Scotland trip. On the last day, he inaugurated a new golf course. It wasn't some diplomatic gesture. The course was on his property. That's right. Trump spent public money to open his own golf course. What's worse, his game left a lot to be desired. Social media users compiled a list of his missed putts. They also found a video of Trump apparently cheating. You can see his caddy drop the ball discreetly on the grass. Not very presidential or fair.
Go, short.
Could happen.
Go. It didn't break that hard.
Could be.
Get in there. Get in. Get in. Oh, good speed though. Break. Oh, it didn't break. That's all right. Go. Right home.
Won yesterday, as you know, we stopped a war. We stopped about 5 wars. So that's much more important than playing golf. As much as I like it, it's much more important. I want to just thank Sarah Malone for having been with us right from the beginning.
And now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. The first Australian-made rocket crashes just 14 seconds after taking off. Pope Leo makes a surprise appearance as the Vatican's Catholic Youth Festival kicks off, and hundreds join former Brazilian President Bolsonaro in a motorcycle rally as he faces a trial over a coup attempt. Finally, we're taking you back in history. On this day in 1930, Uruguay hosted and won the first ever Football World Cup. They defeated Argentina in the finals. The World Cup started as an invitational tournament with just 13 teams. Today, it is one of the biggest sporting events in the world. We're leaving you on that note. Thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
Buenas tardes. Good evening.
Firstpost now available in 9 languages on YouTube. English,
Stands at $36 trillion.
French,
Le FMI, comme
German,
Geschäftsführenden Direktor,
Hindi,
$30 trillion kakaijmo.
Indonesian,
Pemerintah tanpa pemeriksaan
Italian,
fiskali radikali,
Japanese,
4 兆ドル以上も
Portuguese,
por causa do próprio balanço patrimonial.
Spanish.
Beautiful bill.
Go to Settings, click on Audio Track and select the language of your choice. Be the first to know what's happening around you in your first language. Firstpost.